All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the SLC3's education program to design, build, or not to design, build. My name is Steve Banis, and I am a professor at Washington University School of Engineering and an owner member of the SLC3 and a member of the Training and Education Committee. And on behalf of SLC3 Training and Education Committee, we are very pleased to see you this morning. And actually, we hope that the rest of your day continues well. Be safe out there. This might get a little crazy. We begin with a few housekeeping items. First, please make sure that you are muted to eliminate possible disruptions during this morning's program. We also hope that you are free from distractions as much as you can be. We ask that all questions be sent through the chat feature on the bottom of your screen, and we will address those during our Q&A session at the end of the program. This program is being recorded, and the recording will be made available to you. I want to quickly review our agenda today. As you know, we have a full panel here with us. I will begin with a few introductory thoughts on design build, and our expert panel will answer questions from Kurt Gildehouse, our moderator today. At about 9:15, we'll begin Q&A. And finally, Kelly Jackson, our executive director, will close out our meeting and ask you to complete our most important survey. For those of you who don't know us, the SLC3 is a community of design and construction professionals with a common interest in the betterment of our region. Our planning committee has identified 4 key pillars for our organization. They are innovation, continuing education, equity empowerment, and all-inclusive workforce collaboration. Speaking of our continuing education and collaboration, I would like to acknowledge our Training and Education Committee. The committee is responsible for at least 10 programs each year, including this program today. We thank our chair, Brandon Meinert, with the United States Army Corps of Engineers, and his co-chair, Katie Goldberg, with IMEG, for their commitment and leadership to the committee. Every T&E program has a subcommittee to plan each of our programs. Thank you to Kurt Gildehouse and his team for their hard work, and of course, our SLC3 staff in planning this program for us today. Kelly always says it takes a village to provide our extensive list of programs, so we thank these hardworking volunteers. The T&E committee is made up of approximately 24 members, and we're always happy to have more. So please do contact Kelly Jackson if you are interested in this committee or any one of our committees. As an additional benefit of your participation, this program has been developed to permit you to qualify for 1.5 professional development hours for PEs and 1.5 learning units through the American Institute of Architects. Documentation was sent to you and is also available on the SLC3 website on the resources page. We always seek your evaluations after each program. Please take a couple of minutes to answer a few quick questions. The program evaluations and comments are used to prepare for future programming, as well as determine the overall value of our education and networking programs for the year. Please know we take all evaluations seriously and always use data to improve on our programs. Your support is important, and it only takes a few minutes of your time to respond. As always, we have a packed calendar designed to meet the needs of our full membership. We are sure you'll find programs and events you'll want to mark in your calendar. Our third program this month is a virtual presentation next week, Tuesday, February 22nd, 8 to 9:30 a.m. It features Tony Thompson with Kwame Building Group as our keynote speaker for the Diversity Series. The program's title is The Insignificance of Minorities in the New Millennium. This is sure to be an interactive town hall and is free to all members. Next month, we have a project tour at Green Street Properties in Bar K on March 10th, beginning at 4 p.m. This is an exciting new space. You won't want to miss out on Bar K. Registration will be open soon. Put it on the calendar now and look for the registration link. On March 17th, we'll have a webinar on material management best practices. We all know supply chain issues continue to be the challenge. So what should be done to better manage materials going forward? This program is offered at no cost for all members. Finally, we know we have a lot of anxious golfers out there. Registration is open for this year's tournament. Although we have added a third course this year, we highly recommend that you get your reservations in early. It always fills up. So don't wait and miss out. The date of the tournament is May 2nd and teams will be due on April 2nd. Sponsorships are also available. Before our program begins, we want to take time to give special recognition to our training and education program sponsors. Our annual platinum sponsor is Cosme Wagner. We appreciate their top tier support each year. Our gold sponsors are McGrath and Associates, Ross and Barzini, Kawami Building Group, and L. Keeley. Our silver sponsors include Farnsworth Group, Kaiser Electric, JF Electric, ABNA Engineering, OWH Architects, Custom Engineering, and Hush Blackwell. Thanks to all of our sponsors. And now, I think I get to talk a little bit about design build. When we were putting the program together, it was kind of at the last minute, we thought maybe we ought to say something before the panelists begin. And so I've got just a couple of slides. As an educator, I'm always interested in talking about sort of learning objectives. So why are you here today? And I think, you know, it's incredibly important that we look at today as an experiential learning opportunity. And when I say that, I mean, we're actually going to be able to gain some knowledge from the folks on our panel who are going to speak about design build from their own perspective. And that perspective is based on their experience with the delivery method. So there's a lot to be learned, I think, from today's program. Secondly, I think it's important that we sort of define design build. And if we could bring that slide up. Next one. Oh, let me do this first. Yeah. People always ask me, is design build the best delivery system, or what is the best delivery system? Yes, today's program is on design build, but that does not mean it is the best delivery system. In fact, I would suggest that there is no such thing as the best delivery system. As my slide says, there's no silver bullet, there are no best systems. In fact, what really happens is we look for opportunities to create value for projects and our clients by selecting the delivery system that is appropriate for that project, that client in that time. So again, I think from a perspective of endorsing design build, we don't. It's the right solution for the right project at the right time and nothing more than that. Okay, on to the definition. So I can turn this over to Kurt on time. This definition of design build project delivery comes from DBIA. And I like it because I think it hits on the key elements of what design build really is. First, the single, probably most important differentiator is that the owner manages only one contract with a single point of responsibility. That's truly what gives design build its uniqueness. In theory and hopefully we'll hear more today on how it works really well, the design team, the construction team work together to provide a unified project recommendation that fits the owner's schedule, budget, and even, I would say, aesthetic needs, functional needs in terms of design. Collaborative problem solving and innovation. This is, I think, really one of the objectives of design build, by creating a collaboration between design and construct. But in order for that to happen, there really does need to be a culture of collaboration within those firms, those organizations. I've seen design build work really, really well, and I've seen design build work really not so well. And for me, when we do the research, it's essentially this culture of collaboration. If the firms embody that, the delivery method can be very, very successful. If they don't, it can be an almost painful sort of experience. So that's all from me this morning. I will turn over just a tiny bit early to Kurt, who's going to moderate this program. I think you're going to find it interesting based on having looked at the questions and having talked to the panelists. So, Kurt, take it away, please.
All right, thanks, Steve. Good morning, everyone. As Steve said, I'm Kurt Gildehouse with Parrott Corporation. Before I introduce the speakers this morning, just want to kind of lay out that we feel we've really chosen a good, well-rounded group of speakers. We want to try to give you a perspective from the owner, the architect, an engineer, as well as a contractor, and I think we've touched on all of those. We are not here to necessarily sell design build as the only model or the best model. What we really aim to do at the end of this is really show you the pros and cons between the different methods. And then we're going to touch on some technology advances at the end of that. We've picked out 5 questions that we think are really applicable and that kind of dive into it. And so without further ado, I'm going to introduce our speakers to you. First up is Al Detmer with Bayer. Al, do you want to tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Kurt. My name's Al Detmer. As Kurt mentioned, I'm with Bayer. My title is Unit Head for Project Services and Discipline Engineering. My responsibilities are primarily in North America, focused on the seed sites that we have some 30 sites across North America, and also the chemical crop protection sites, of which we have about 4, again, in North America. Responsibilities include, as the title implies, design, detailed design, and also construction management out of those sites in North America. So thank you, Kurt.
Perfect. Thank you, Al. Next up is Matt Foreman with Cannon Design. Matt, please introduce yourself.
Hello, this is Matt. I'm with Cannon Design. We're a large national, international architectural and engineering firm. I'm based here in St. Louis, but I've done healthcare projects all over the United States and in Canada. I'm a project manager and a vice president, usually on large healthcare projects.
Thanks, Matt. Next up, we have Jameson Blobaum with Murphy Company. Jameson, take it away, please.
Hi, I'm Jameson Blobaum with Murphy Company. I'm the director of pre-construction here. I have the unique, I have 2 roles in this, 2 different hats. Half my career, I was a consulting engineer at a local consulting engineering firm. I ran the mechanical and plumbing group. And then the other half of my career, I've been a design build contracting representative. So I kind of get to represent the consulting engineers and the design build contractors in this event.
Thanks, Jameson. And last but not least, Alex Belkofer with McCarthy Building.
Thanks, Kurt. Good morning, everybody. Alex Belkofer with McCarthy Building Companies. I'm our virtual design and construction director. Good to see a lot of familiar names and faces on the screen here this morning. Good to see some past and former partners. My role at McCarthy specifically is to really leverage and focus on our application of technology throughout the project lifecycle. My background primarily has been in construction operations, also have a architectural background and degree. So a lot of my career I've spent working on impacting and making efficiencies to project delivery through the use of technology. So I'm looking forward to sharing some of those insights with you guys here today and how we do this at McCarthy from a design build standpoint.
Perfect. Thanks, Alex. Okay, we're going to move on to our questions. First question is going to be answered by Al. And the question is, what would prompt an owner to select a design build delivery model over a traditional design bid build model? Al?
Thanks, Kurt. I'll preface my comments by mentioning that an owner's decision-making process can vary depending upon the specific owner's experience as a consumer of construction services and also their own in-house capabilities. So those two factors can play into how any one owner makes their decision on how to deliver a project. But with that said, I'll offer some general thoughts from an owner's perspective regarding a selection of a design build delivery model. The DB approach can be attractive if an owner is looking for a single point of contact and responsibility for a project. That's compared to, say, an alternative design or perhaps a design bid build project, or other delivery models which can require contracting and coordinating with multiple firms with different sets of responsibilities relating to design and construction and other aspects of the project. The use of the design build method provides a single point of contact for both design and construction, which can streamline the communication between the owner and all parties executing a construction project. Thus, that limits the time and resource requirements from an owner. So that can be a strong influence in favor of design build. Schedule is a second factor that may impact the decision to select design build. DB can provide an opportunity to compress the project timeline in some cases. For instance, the calendar time allocated to design and the front end of a project may be able to be reduced through a close partnership between the design and construction activities. That's oftentimes afforded by a design build model. With design and construction under the responsibility of one firm, the design builder is likely able to expedite the schedule critical elements of the design needed to meet a project's critical path schedule requirements, which can again help compress that schedule. The third factor I'll mention, and final factor that I'll mention in this opening remark is regarding the level of involvement that an owner needs or feels they need to have or chooses to have in the detailed design of the project. Design build can be a great approach for projects that do not require significant involvement by the owner in the detailed design or day-to-day activities of a project. From an owner's perspective, however, an owner may shy away from design build projects which require the owner to be deeply involved in the very details of the design. The need for such involvement in the design might be driven by an owner's internal expertise. The project may involve developing a new technology that's going to require a great deal of involvement from the owner, or the owner may choose just to be sure that they're involved with the details. There may also be business and process critical details that only owners' representatives would know or would feel like they need to be involved with. In those kinds of cases or in those situations, the owners may want a direct relationship with the owner, with the engineers and designers of the project. So they may choose to go down a little different route than design build and perhaps have their internal resources preparing the design and or contracting, have specific contractual relationships with third-party engineering services to give them more direct control over the design. That's not to say the design build can't be done in those cases, but those are just some of the thoughts that an owner might go through in trying to select the right delivery model for a given project. So those are just general comments regarding a few of the many factors, but I'll turn it back over to Kurt and defer to others on the panel for their views.
All right. Thanks, Al. Anyone else on the panel like to comment on that real quick before we move on to question 2?
I'll throw one in there real quick, Kurt. You know, I've worked with a number of owners like Al, and one thing that I've seen is kind of a good continual thread is a lot of them are focused more on quality over cost. It's not always just about cost, quality in not just the product or the design, but the quality of the team members, quality in the approaches and the different ways of thinking. And those owners, I think, are more team focused, they're more team oriented, and they leverage the power and the value of the full team to drive solutions. So I love hearing those things from Al, and I've seen that from a lot of other owners as well.
Good point, Alex. Okay, moving on to question 2. Jameson is going to answer this question. And the question is, how does the design build approach impact the relationships between project team members? Jameson?
Make sure I'm unmuted first here. So, start off with a little anecdote. So when having been a consulting engineer and a contractor both, a lot of people ask, what's the biggest difference between working at a consulting engineering firm and working as a mechanical contractor? And my response is usually the biggest difference is, as a consultant, people ask me when I was available for meetings and schedule them around my schedule. And as a contractor, I'm told when to be there and nobody cares about my schedule. So this is a result of the traditional hierarchy of a design, build, bid project team. The traditional team structure is usually, 5, 6 tiers more. Picture the pyramid structure where you've got the owner on the top, and then the architect and the engineer and the GC and the subs and the sub-subs. On a design build project, it's basically a flat structure. So it takes the pyramid and flattens it. With design build MEP subs, it would usually be at the bottom of the team. We now get a huge upgrade, and we're right at the top, right at the top with the rest of with the owner and the architect. So design build changes the hierarchy of this traditional team, and this structural change alone can have a tremendous impact on the relationship between the team members. One example of this communication is communication within the project team. Design consultants typically feel like they can voice any concerns or ideas directly within any level of the project team, including directly to the owner. However, subcontractors in most traditional project delivery situations are forced to put on their dumb contractor hat and follow the chain of command. This inability to speak freely and openly can sometimes lead to lost opportunities on the project. On design build projects, the flat structure of the project team enables the subcontractors to speak freely and bring all their ideas to the table directly to the entire project team, including the highest level of the owner. That's kind of what my couple of thoughts on that. Turn it back to Kurt and my panelists to add to that.
Thanks, Jameson. Matt or Al or Alex, would any of you three like to comment on that or add to that?
I'll add just a couple of quick comments, Kurt, if that's okay.
Certainly.
I would just add that I think the relationship between the owner and the design build contractor tends to be pretty strong in the design build experience because there's that single point of contact that I've mentioned, and I think Steve mentioned in his opening comments. That single point of contact can drive a very strong relationship because you have to work together because everything goes through those two entities. The other point I would make is kind of build on what Jameson was mentioning. I see the contractor, the construction arm of the design build, the build side of design build being, just from an owner's perspective, being a little stronger in this kind of project delivery method. And oftentimes there are strategies that involve the design that can be brought forward very early in the project. So a builder can include the way they want to construct things using their methodologies in the design, which can drive cost, can impact cost in a positive way, meaning driving costs down, and also help schedule. That close collaboration between design and construction all under one contract. I think it seems to me as an owner that I see the builder side having a stronger influence early in the project, helping drive efficiencies. So just a couple comments.
I would agree with you, Al. Alex or Matt, any comment you'd like to make?
Matt, you first.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Absolutely agree with what Al just said, because that early engagement from the contractor should be used to inform the design. We should be actually, as architects and engineers, listening to the best way to achieve the performance goals of the project. And that's actually one of the fundamental premises of design build, is that it should be performance based, not prescriptive, necessarily specification based. As Al was referencing, the owner has certain goals. What does the owner want to achieve? And then it's up to the collaborative design build team to figure out the best way to achieve those goals.
Kurt, I'll throw in one thing on the topic of building the relationship. I'm a big believer in what I call intentional partnering at the beginning of a project. And whether that means getting in a room and just getting to know each other, or going all in and creating a project charter, I think that the intentional partnering effort on a design build job is critical for the team to really gel and really leverage each other's strengths, different subject matter expertise, years of experience in a certain field or a certain way of doing things. It really does require, no matter who's in the lead, a healthy respect for people, their disciplines or their subject matter of expertise, and then how we do that together. There's a saying in McCarthy about slow is smooth and smooth is fast. We do believe that with design build, you kind of have to start slow, build that relationship to really get the team really gelling and moving in that same direction, to have that healthy respect for each other and to do the project as best as we can.
Perfect. Well, as a moderator, I don't know if I'm supposed to comment or not, but I would agree with what you guys have said. I think from what I've seen in my experience, it builds a really cohesive relationship amongst all the team members. There's really a vested interest by everyone. So, okay, we're going to move on to question 3. Matt is going to take this. This is a kind of a lengthy question, so I'll read it slow, and then Matt will jump in and answer it. So the question is, would the design build process aid in streamlining or enhancing any of the various aspects of construction? An example, cost, quality, schedule, or safety over the traditional design bid build method?
Thanks, Kurt. The first one on the list, cost, is probably one of the biggest places where we can see impact from a collaborative, and as Alex just noted, a very respectful agreement between all the partners. As the architects and engineers typically draw, we'll put out there the basis of design for a set of documents that then typically the owner says, yes, that's what I want. Let's put it out on the street, see how much the contractors come back with the cost. There is invariably another round after that bid comes in for value engineering, and oh wait, we didn't realize that was going to cost that much, and we start the push and pull on achieving the owner's goals, but also achieving the owner's budget and the responsible use of their resources. In the best design build sequences, you end up with that collaborative relationship during design. Schematic design, design development are great places to make decisions before we actually create the documentation during construction document production. So if I can sit with the contractors all the way down to the subcontractors, as Jameson referenced, and tell them what we want, what is the performance that we're trying to get to, and then we can get their input and embed it within the design documents. There's ways that, I may want this thing to look like that, and they say, hey, can I do it this way? That'll save us X number of dollars. So cost is absolutely number one on that list. Safety as well, the constructability of some things, making minor design changes that can make something much more constructible. Absolutely the time to do it's during construction documents. Schedule as well. That value engineering effort takes time. If that's being done concurrent with the document delivery, then at the end of those documents, we should be much closer to the critical path schedule. One of the biggest things that's actually a variable in the equation, sometimes people think, oh, design build, the design team is drawing less. That actually may or may not be true. And there are times where that construction document production schedule may or may not get shorter. But if you're engaging the contractor, it tends to accelerate the overall schedule and ideally eliminates rework, and there's just a more efficient delivery for the owner.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Once again, to the panelists, any comments anyone would like to make.
Yeah, I'd like to add on to a lot of what Matt was talking about there, Kurt.
Sure.
When with the Kurt kind of or Matt kind of alluded to, with the traditional delivery method, you have design, then you bid it, and you have the bid review process, and you go through the VE and redesign, and then procurement and BIM and prefab, if there's time left to prefab, and then finally you do construction. With design build, the whole process is streamlined, and the owner will have a very good idea of the price before the design is even officially started, therefore eliminating the need for VE and redesign. Since the whole pre-con process is streamlined, this gives the team the ability to start the construction activities early and fast track the entire project. A few examples: ordering long lead items to make sure the equipment's on site when you need it. In today's new COVID market, it also helps secure pricing, because the reality today is that pricing is only truly secured when we release it for production. BIM coordination can be concurrent with design completion. Alex can further explain how the BIM process is different on design build jobs. All of this in turn gives the team substantially more time to plan, coordinate, and build prefab in advance of construction. Prefabrication takes time, lots of time. The more time you have to focus on prefabrication up front, the more benefits you'll receive from it. This translates into benefits in all the categories that Kurt said in the question: cost, schedule, quality, and safety. More prefabrication equals lower costs. Quality is more consistent and typically better on prefabricated work because it's performed in a controlled environment. Schedule: more prefabrication always equals a shorter schedule. And safety: the majority of accidents happen on job sites, not at our fab shops. This is a result of the work also being performed in a controlled environment focused solely on fabrication. This also gives the project less men on the job sites, further reducing the opportunities for the accidents on your projects. Alex, can you explain kind of some of the differences on the BIM process for design build versus traditional?
Sure. Well, you gave me a great quote to start with. You said plan, coordinate, and build. And what I would say is planning, coordination, and building virtually before we build physically is absolutely paramount for design build work. What I would even say to that is, while this question is specifically about cost, quality, schedule, and safety, that plan, coordinate, and build sequence virtually using BIM and using virtual design and construction processes is where I really do believe the team needs to come together early and truly define that. Put that into a project execution plan. Be fully aligned with how we do the mechanics of that together, because it is different, right? We have more cooks in the kitchen on a design build project, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a matter of folks understanding how we're going to execute, how we will plan, how we go through the coordination process, and what that coordination process can enable when successfully coordinated to then do that virtual building piece. Jameson alludes to the idea of prefabrication. There's modularization, all these things that we can now do now in a virtual environment before we actually get to the factory, get to the fabrication assembly line, before we get to putting it on the truck and bringing it to the field. All that, though, does require project planning, and usually that execution plan and all the stakeholders coming together, including the owner, to define those things really will help that team have a well-oiled process to take advantage of things like building information modeling in a virtual design and construction process.
So to come back to a couple of points that both Jameson and Alex have made, in that there has to be a robust pre-construction effort from the general contractor. And then part of what comes into that as well is the actual roles of the trade partners themselves. And that comes into the document production. So when Alex is talking about an execution plan for the virtual modeling and the design process, we need to actually make sure that we have good handoffs and that we have an understanding between the design professionals and trade partners of what everybody's roles are. One of the critical things that both of them have mentioned is prefabrication or modularization. That's one of those things that has to be baked into the design early. I can't come in later as an architect after the bids have been done and say, oh, let's take all the bathrooms and modularize them. That has to be done from almost day one on the project. And it's not just modular bathrooms. I know that's an easy example. It's been done here in St. Louis. It's been done all over the world. but we're starting to grow that. We're getting to the point now where we can actually produce entire hospital exam rooms and suites that are coming in prefabricated. There's a lot of aspects, not just safety, not just man hours, but even on tight urban sites where we need to actually be able to concisely deliver something because we simply don't have staging.
Perfect. Thanks, Matt. Al, anything you'd like to add to that, or? You're muted, Al. There you go.
I think I'll pass. I think it was well covered by the other panelists.
I do as well. Okay, moving on to question 4. Alex is going to answer this, which I think we've probably touched on some of this already in question 3, but we're gonna plow forward with this. So the question is, what facets of the project delivery must be looked at differently with a design build approach? An example, BIM, the contracts, the front ends, technology, design deliverables, etc., versus the more traditional approach. Alex?
Sure. Well, I'll cover this kind of in a couple different ways. I'll kind of start with the concept of this integrated approach. You know, when I used to do work in more of the traditional side of things early on in my career, you know, you notice that you didn't have to inject a lot of these newer strategies, you know, being lean, things like prefab, you know, thinking so far ahead of the project life cycle. You kind of knew where things plugged in. You got into a routine and you kind of copy and paste it, and people just kind of came to understand kind of where certain roles in the project team, you know, plugged in, where you had to focus, where you were blocking and tackling certain risk items. I think that really now gets accentuated and highlighted earlier in design build with all those things kind of mentioned there. And the way that I try to approach it is, where are there the differences in how people interact? Where are the differences in process? And then where are the differences in our tool sets or our technology? To me, it's all about, when I say people, it's how we communicate. When I say process, it's how are we going to operate? And when I say technology, I'm saying, how do we collaborate and execute? You know, the traditional ways of coordination and kind of the ball getting handed off downstream to different project partners is now morphed into collaboration, which is being involved earlier and blocking and tackling risk and fixing things together before they truly become a coordination problem at the field level, which, you know, was many of our lives for many years. So when I look at this integrated approach, that to me is key at the beginning is, you know, let's define our risk areas. Let's define target value design. Let's define the guardrails for value engineering if we get to that point where cost becomes a concern. Let's make sure we understand how to use new tools. You know, Matt and I and Jameson have worked on projects recently where we rolled out a new tool set, and it was kind of scary to some people, but we got people comfortable with this tool will be better, and here's why, and it will make us more efficient if we take a little bit of time to learn it. So there's lots of things that get woven into that integrated approach, and I do feel like that intentional conversation of identifying the pain points or the risk areas for that integrated approach become super impactful and important, because then it will be able to make sure that things like our BIMX plan, our contracts and front ends, our technology strategy, what the design deliverables are going to look like and when they shake out, all those things will then be much more in line.
Okay, thanks, Alex. Once again, any of the panelists any comments to that?
Kurt, I will add a couple of comments on that question, if it's all right.
Absolutely.
Regarding contracts and front ends, that can be very different in a design build approach versus other delivery methods. First of all, the front end documents are the very early discussions between the owners and the contractors. Generally, going back to a design bid build, obviously the design documents are very detailed, spelling out the details, including ASTM quality specifications, so just a lot of details around all aspects of the construction materials. In the design build methodology, the front end documents are very different in that they're almost performance based, or at least in my view, they should be more describing what the owner is looking for. So those early documents forming the basis of the contracts and the understanding between the owner and the contractors need to be based very differently. It's not about the details of what materials are used, what pipe, what strength of steel to use, more around what's the end product look like? What is the owner expecting in the end needs to be a focus of those early discussions and front-end contractual documents. Then the contract itself has to be very different. There are design contracts out there which have unique aspects for professional design services, and there are a lot of contracts for construction, which are very unique and specialized for the construction world. Pulling those two together is that's an important aspect early in the project to get the right contract in place to cover both aspects. The Design Build Institute has a contracts and contractual documents out there. I've seen a lot of organizations try to pull different types of contracts together, but it has to be focused up front. And then that ties into just kind of a watch out on at the end of a project. And ideally it's addressed in the contract, but who owns the design deliverables at the end, meaning the design documents. That may be well understood and not an issue, but I have seen where that has become an issue at the end of a project of who owns those design documents. That's something to be considered early in the project, actually in the contractuals stage if possible.
All right, thanks, Al. Anyone else?
There's a couple of points that Al mentioned, and he did mention the Design Build Institute of America, DBIA, and they do have their own set of contracts that are different from the traditional AIA or AGC documents that a lot of us have used over the years. So the heart of the question is, what are you looking at differently in a design build approach? And I would actually suggest that if you're undertaking design build as a delivery for a significant project, it would be worth everybody's investment in the Design Build Institute of America has a 3-day course. And it kind of sounds onerous, but wow, I learned so much in those 3 days. And it really does describe a completely different process than the traditional bid build process. So I would urge project teams, even to the point of, if you're considering it, have the owner, the designer, and the contractor take the class together and really get into it and form a common language about how to talk about performance and responsibilities on the job.
Perfect. Thanks, Matt.
Kurt, I might jump in real quick on that one because I do feel like the design deliverable conversation with design build delivery and with our world now really being building information modeling driven, right? Not just 2-dimensionally driven. It requires a lot of the team members to understand the mechanics of that. I mean, Matt and I can't tell you how many times we've talked about that over the course of our project together. And it's healthy and robust when you have a team of people that understands how you're going to do design deliverables differently, with people leveraging BIM, many different BIM files on a project, how those come together to create not just the construction documents, but coordination drawings and then deliverables for the life of the project. And it can be a little cumbersome kind of going through the mechanics of that, but DBIA, much like many other large organizations like the AGC and AIA, they've really come up with good common languages. And we talk about language in our industry around this concept of LOD, level of development. Not going to get into today, but I think it's important to understand that there are industry standards out there that will help guide your project around these types of things, and leverage, of course, the team's resources that fully understand the mechanics of how to use BIM, how it gets applied across the project lifecycle and the partners, because you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's lots of great references out there. DBIA even has a BIM manual of practice to start from. So there's lots of great references out there. Leverage your resources.
All right, thanks, Alex. Okay, moving on to our 5th and final question. This is going to be taken by Jameson. And the question is, what are the greatest concerns over using the design build delivery model versus traditional methods? And what steps can be taken to address these concerns? Jameson? You're muted.
Great. That's good to do. Having been on both sides of these projects as consultants and design build contractor, I've heard and responded to various concerns numerous times with both hats on. And I tell you, the number one most consistent concern is The old saying, isn't the fox watching the hen house? I mean, that's, anytime you hear design build, that's what everybody says, isn't the fox watching the hen house? There are several different ways that you can help mitigate this concern. One way is to engage a qualified engineering consultant. This consultant should at a minimum prepare a design build criteria that clearly identifies the scope of the project and the owner's project requirements. The criteria would then be sent out to the bidders to help ensure an equal starting point and a level playing field for the bid process. The consultant then would help the project team review the bids and help compare scopes and make recommendations to the team. For some projects, this level of engagement by the design professional would be enough, but for others, it may be beneficial to keep them involved to conduct peer reviews of the design build drawings, submittals, and periodic walkthroughs of the construction to ensure compliance with the criteria. Another popular method to address this concern is to issue the package as design assist. I know this panel is about design build, not design assist, but really isn't design assist just a variation of design build? Design assist can be implemented in so many ways, all of which can help address the concern about the fox watching the hen house because of the engagement of the consulting engineer throughout the project. I'm not going to get into all of those potential ways to implement design assist right now. Maybe that's a good topic for the next panel. With either approach, you need to make sure to invite qualified contractors to bid on the projects. If possible, you should even consider negotiating projects up front with known high-performing design build contractors and build your dream team for the project. This sometimes isn't an option due to procurement concerns within organizations. I'd like to ask my fellow panelists to add their experiences on this topic, particularly Al, as an owner. I'd like to hear his perspective.
Al, looks like you're up.
Thanks, Al. I will add a couple comments. I appreciate that, Jameson. I guess as far as the greatest concerns over design build delivery, one of them comes to the top is just expectations in general, both from an owner or the users at an owner's site. Making sure that the concerns about expectations of the end user matching up with what the design build contractor's expectations are. So we don't have in this methodology early in the project, when we sign contracts, we don't have the level of detail down on a drawing or in specifications. So has to be more, in my view, more effort put into understanding from both sides what the expectations are, so that when we get to the end product is what the end user expected and needs to have. So that is a concern, but I think one that it's a risk that can be mitigated through a rather intensive effort and communication early in the project and throughout the design aspect, the design of the project. It's something that can be it's a concern that can be addressed. Another concern would be answering questions around best value. And I think Jameson kind of touched on this, but those that are not as, that haven't been involved with design build a lot on an owner side might be asking, how do we know we're getting a good value? As opposed to if we design, bid, and build it, the bid shows, well, what the costs are from the various proposing vendors, proposing contractors. So answering the question about best value is a little more complicated. It's not hard to answer, but it's a little more nuanced. But in the end, I think design build does provide good value when it's applied in the right project and in the right way with the right project team members. But it is a question that can be difficult to answer on the owner side for some people in the owner organization.
Perfect. Alex or Matt, anything you'd like to add before we move on?
So there's been mention of a few different delivery methods within design build. So as Al's talking about, is you're getting into the contracts early to alleviate that fear of, I've signed up for this thing, I haven't even designed it yet, and now I'm committed to this big chunky dollar price on this project. There's a number of different subtleties to how design build can be done. Jameson's already mentioned design assist versus pure design build. Even within design build, there's variations such as progressive design build, where you'd have part A and part B services. So under a progressive design build contract, you would do the part A services, which is the design work with pre-construction from the contractor with the owner engagement. And then you can get to an initial or a basic GMP, where that can then be an approval point, a touch point from the owner, where they can decide if they want to move forward to the part B, the actual production of the construction documents and the actual construction of the building. And there are some lines in there that you can push and pull to make sure that the delivery method is suiting your project, your company's structure, your ownership, and even the delivery style. I would also note there's a question in the chat about where is this design build delivery successful, heavy construction versus healthcare. So a lot of the heavy construction, you'll actually see a P3 delivery, which is another kind of variation on design build, public-private partnership. And we've actually done, as Canon Design's done, very large healthcare projects as P3s, but there's a different set of challenges to doing a pure P3. Those work really great for things like highways, where some of that performance is very codified, as Al was referencing, ASTM standards, DOT standards, et cetera.
All right.
I'll throw one thing in real quick, Kurt, before we move on. The idea of full buy-in, while it sounds simple for this type of delivery model, I think that is the greatest concern. Is you don't want to have half the team bought into this approach. It requires all the stakeholders to be fully committed. What that really means, though, is you have to take that time, as I mentioned before, about that partnering and the alignment, because there is going to be change in process, right? You have to work together to optimize the whole, which is a lean principle. You got to have a methodical approach to the project planning effort, talking about process changes. And what I really think is the key here is having experienced facilitators helping to guide the team who has not done design build before. We can't all expect to put together this dream team where everybody's worked on a design build job. If we could, that'd be amazing. But the reality is you need to have some facilitators who have done this before, who know the mechanics, and can help lead not just one type of meeting, but many types of interactions and engagements with the team across that project lifecycle to make sure that we got the right folks in the room, making the right decisions, looking at that optimization of the full team. And it is hard sometimes to find those groups of facilitators, those key folks in our team that can kind of be our leaders, our champions for design build. But I would strive to encourage everybody to start finding or building those people in your organizations, because they're going to be the key to success.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Alex. Okay, so that concludes our question portion of this. I just want to, before I move on to the Q&A, I want to say that I hope that everyone thought that the questions were well targeted and that the answers kind of, laid out the pros and cons of the design build versus design bid build. So moving on to the Q&A session, I'm going to ask the panelists to open up the chat because some of these questions are a little lengthy. I'll read the questions and I will probably pick one of you to respond. How about that? So the first question, Al, I think this is probably suited for you, but someone else can jump in if need be. The question is, how do we get owners to understand / trust that putting together a sub-team during the napkin sketch actually has long-term value to their project?
That's a good question and a difficult one to answer. I think it depends on the owner a little bit, and so you know your audience to some extent. Some owners, it's going to be a difficult road for less experienced owners to understand. For owners that are involved in construction on a regular basis, I think I don't think it's a particularly difficult sell. There's pluses and minuses, and I think you can have a conversation about what you can bring to the table in a design build setting, so that early in the project you can have a bigger impact. I think the sophisticated owners, if I can use that word, understand that the real value, the real driving of value in a project occurs in the napkin stage. For owners that do not do construction on a regular, are not involved with consuming construction services on a regular basis, that's going to be a more detailed conversation. And maybe the best way to do it is to offer examples where you are able to, as a contractor, provide a different methodology in the way you construct something or in the way you design and construct it, with the end product being very matching up with what the owner is wanting, but how your methodologies can drive efficiencies either in cost or schedule. So providing examples for the less experienced owners might be the best approach, or at least a good approach.
Okay, good. All right, moving on. Question 2 is actually kind of a multi-part question. Al, I think you may want to tackle some of this, and Matt, I think you're going to be good to jump in on this as well. The first part is, for the owners, how are you pursuing proposals for design build projects? And then the second part of that is, are you developing the scope internally and getting competitive bids from contractors? Or is it starting as a relationship with a contractor and the scope is refined as the project progresses? So kind of a few parts of that. Al, I don't know if
I'll answer it in a couple of parts. In the role I'm in currently, and what we do most frequently, we will develop when we're targeting a design build, we would put together a preliminary scope that would outline what our expectations are, and then we would generally competitively bid it. Having said that, that's what we've done most recently. I have been involved with a lot of projects where it has gone the other way, where schedule is a real driver. We team up with we interview and or work with a number of different contractors, and then narrow it down to a specific contractor to drive some of those efficiencies that we've heard talked about early in the project. So we pick the right project team, and then at that point drive the project forward through design build to drive efficiencies. Oftentimes it's schedule that's making us move in that direction. So I guess the answer is both. We take both. I've seen both approaches work and work well. It's oftentimes a schedule driven that'll drive us to building a relationship and then defining the scope once we've with that selected project team.
Sure. Matt, anything you'd like to add to that?
A couple of pieces. So from the design build team who's proposing on the owner's project, we actually have to form that team before we can even pursue the project. So if we know something's coming out, we'll actually start relationship building, and we're structuring the team of constructors, engineers, architects. We're putting that team together that we think is best for that owner's delivery. For us, then, the more information we can get from the owner on what their actual goals are and what the project is, that becomes very important for us to be able to structure that delivery and give our proposals to the owner. And that can run a full spectrum from government projects that are very, very prescriptive. The US government actually runs the MATOC program, which is a multi-project delivery model that is very rigorous. It's run by the US military. So there's lots of different flavors across the board, and there's different levels of owner engagement that may drive different success for some of the projects.
Okay. All right, moving on to the next question. The question is, are there markets or industries where design build has been less successful, such as healthcare versus heavy industry versus power utilities, et cetera? I don't know, Alex or Jameson, would either of you like to jump in on that one?
Sure. I mean, I can start off. You know, I think design build fits in any industry, really. I mean, you see it. You know, it really started. You know, you used to always see it in the you know, the big box warehouses and commercial office buildings. And but you know, now you see it in across all industries, healthcare, you know, heavy industrial and process type things. So I mean, I don't think there are, you know, it's been very successful in all those, and I think it continues to show there's no limit to what you can do design build. Alex, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I would support that. I think the big one for me is qualified resources, right? You don't want to try and put a team into a design, build, delivery model that is really not familiar with it or is not kind of built for it and they don't have the horsepower. You are going to have to move quicker and be a bit more agile. And if you don't have those resources across the full project team, then it could be more cumbersome. And then you might get a bad taste in your mouth and realize that, maybe design build, may not have been the right choice. So you don't want to do that, but you definitely want to make sure you have the right folks.
That's a good point. And markets not only means it would mean like a rural market where you're not by a city, a large city with contractors that are willing to go to those markets. Sometimes the availability of resources is a challenge in those areas.
Okay.
I would add a comment if I could regarding where design build has been less successful. My comment's not around a specific industry, but more around the type of projects. And I would put it in the type of project being a process intensive projects is a challenge, I think, particularly if the owner has very clear vision and expectations on what they want and the detailed knowledge of the process internally. And it's difficult for the contractor to have that same knowledge and expertise that the owner does in the process intensive industries. So alignment of expectations can be difficult early in a project like that, which can make design build a challenge.
So to build on that point, healthcare is called out specifically, and healthcare is, just like Al said, a very process intensive industry. And there's a lot of times where the clients will bring to us their room standards, and they've done this for years. It's their wheelhouse. They know exactly what they want these spaces to look like. And to reach back to some of the team building references by Alex and others, that mutual respect, there are times where when we're doing a design build healthcare project, the design team, the architects and the healthcare planners lead a specific portion of the work. Then we can get into some of the things that Jameson has mentioned with how do we efficiently deliver infrastructure, et cetera, behind the walls and above the ceilings. But there's a parallel course there where we need the general contractor and the subcontractors to help us with, hey, what's the best building structure to enable all of this stuff? So that mutual respect and letting people play to their strengths. There's a greater role for the healthcare planners during that portion of design, but there's a greater role for the contractor and the concrete guys during that other part of the design.
Okay. All right, moving on to the next question. Matt, I think this is probably a good question for you to take. And the question is, are there certain clients, for example, those who build more, who are more adept at employing a design build approach versus the non-informed or non-experienced build client?
So we've seen in the past some clients that have taken the time to be educated. They've done design build before, they see the value and they want to move forward with it. We have other clients who may have heard about design build and they're like, hey, let's give this a shot. But that educational component is very important. We sometimes see clients who say they want to design build, but then some of their back of house processes and some of their project controls don't actually work with a design build model. So you end up with kind of design build and name only. And they're saying, well, but I still need this, and I still need to have this checkpoint. So that it's not just a delivery from the contractor and the design team. It's a project delivery from the owner. And especially groups, large corporate groups that do have their own design and construction sub-teams, people that do, as Al referenced, educated consumers, those consumers who can really dive in and understand the process tend to be really good to work with. I have seen though, where we have owners that know they want the delivery, but they'll hire a program manager or an owner's agent to help guide them through the process, still being able to get some of those benefits. But that common language and those contractual forms and responsibilities absolutely need to be worked out early, because they are not just default what you've been doing for the last 100 years.
Okay.
Hey, Kurt, could I tag on to Matt's comment?
Oh, absolutely, Steve.
What Matt just said is spot on. And I think part of the problem is that the use of the phrase project delivery method or project delivery system doesn't adequately define what it really is. I like the phrase project execution strategy. So it gets into much more than, it implies that it's much more than a purchasing decision for an order to make. It's really much, much more than that. And if we can embrace delivery systems as execution strategies, we can start seeing how it becomes a much bigger decision for all involved, especially the owner.
Perfect. Thanks, Steve. All right, our next question, Al, this one's specifically directed at you. And I think reading the question, I believe what they're asking for is not necessarily what drives a company to use design build, but moreover, what type of construction partner, what are they looking for in a construction partner that would lead them to go design build? So I think our question one actually talked about, why would someone choose the DB method? And this question here, Al, the question is, when choosing a construction partner, what are the key factors for you that lead to a decision to engage with a company on a design build project? So once again, I think the question is probably geared at, what are you looking for in a construction partner?
Yeah. I take it as the premises that it's a design, the decision's been made to, or likely to made to go to a design build execution strategy. With that, the kind of construction partner or execution partner that we might typically look for is someone obviously with experience in the type of project that we're talking about. So if we're building an office building, what kind of have we had experience with that partner on that type of project? If it's a process-driven project, even down to the type of process that we're talking about. So experience is important. I say that because obviously in design build execution strategy, you don't have detailed documents defining what the end product's going to look like. So if the construction partner has experience, you can point to either what they've done for you or somebody else. So they've done something like this, what their work looks like, performs like, and they can or they cannot meet the expectations. So that's a real key, is having that experience. Another part is, what's the whole project team look like? Because a construction partner can be just a construction company, or they can have internal design resources. They may have strong relationships with other third-party design firms. That all comes into play with what does the whole project team have the skills and experience needed to deliver the end product. And if any parts of that team are new and different, again, having direct experience is best, but if it's not direct experience, what else can they point to in their background where they've had experience delivering those projects? So it's a matter of experience and and evaluating the whole project team from design through construction, being sure that the expertise is there and the experience is there. And I guess the third point would be just that the design build is a very unique approach. So if it's somebody if it's a construction partner that's not used to delivering projects in that way, somebody's going up along a learning curve and they're taking the owner along with them. And that may not be a particularly good experience if they don't have a lot of experience in design build. That would be an important aspect of it.
Okay. Our next question is, how does the design builder control downstream costs when the design build team is already on board? And That is, how does a design builder push back on cost for modification and changes? So I don't know if Alex or Matt, Jameson, kind of open it up, whichever one of you three would like to take it.
Yeah, I can start for sure. I think a lot of it, from my lens, has to do with creating good checkpoints and having a very clear schedule to ensure that the expectations are aligned on when decisions have to be made and when there's what we call a choosing by advantage point in the project, or CBA. For those of you guys familiar with that, right, it comes down to really big decisions that may have large change impact, large cost impact, change to the schedule. So being very clear with the client and the full team on kind of when those things need to be decided so the project can keep moving smoothly and keep moving efficiently. I think a big part of where sometimes we have heartburn as a design builder with cost comes in when the expectations weren't clear on when a decision point needed to be made because we had the best value packaged together at that time. But now we're losing value because now decisions maybe are not being made or there's further evaluation being done. So just being sensitive to that, making sure we're incorporating all parties' thoughts and opinions so that we can keep moving quickly and efficiently, and make sure that, you know, there isn't going to be that pause point that might create heartburn. Matt, you have other thoughts to that?
Very similar thoughts. At the end of the day, you're after controlling the project budget and the end deliverable. We all want happy clients. We all want to do more work for the same clients and continue to build relationships and professional portfolios, all those other good things, right? But this is baked into the cake. The owner has a certain amount of resources available and they have a certain target for a project that needs to perform a certain way. And if it's bid build or design build, if it's design build, then we're going to be able to have those checkpoints Alex talked about, to have those, you know, interim milestones with initial GMPs and final GMPs. And it's the whole team's responsibility to hit those numbers. And there are places where we may reach a point where something's off the curve more than anticipated. There's added scope. We're seeing market changes right now with supply chains that are creating unique challenges. Part of the design build relationship is engaging the owner and engage the owner to see where they see the value, where do they really want to spend their money. Where on a bid build project, you still have all the same constraints, but you don't have as much collaboration. So we'll publish a set of documents, that price will come back too high, and now we've got rework. So there's still that project control. We're just doing it during the process instead of something comes in after the design team is done and the bids come back too high and now we're doing rework. We're trying to control the costs during the process.
Okay. All right, the last question that I have, it's kind of lengthy. I'm going to ask Alex to take this question. Alex, I think I'm going to kind of read through this. I think the question really is, what are the benefits, disadvantages between the two methods? One being the traditional design build, where everybody's on board early, and then one more of a different approach where you go to a design assist. I think that's the question. Kevin, you might want to, Kevin Studer, if you want to chime in, feel free. But I think that's kind of what you're driving at there.
Well, to some extent, ultimately, I'm hearing more about really good project delivery in this commentary. Design build is a method of contracting, right? And contractual relationships. I'm asking this question, design build approach versus CM at risk with early involvement from MEP subcontracts, where you can get all of the benefits of this approach, where you've got the right folks at the table at the right time to develop scope, schedule, budget, constructability, prefab, all those things. You know, I think you can accomplish it both means. That doesn't mean one or the other. And to Steve's point earlier, it's going to be a project-based approach. I'm looking for benefits, disadvantages between those approaches so that as I find projects, I say, well, maybe design build is better for this scenario. Maybe the CM at risk with early involvement
Yeah.
is better.
I think I know where Kevin's going there, and I appreciate the question, Kevin. Right? It kind of sounds like, could you do a lot of the same things in one versus the other? I think the short answer is you could. I mean, if Al, Jameson, Matt, and I were teamed up and we were fully aligned, and Matt just so happened to not be under my contract, but we all understood what each other were trying to do, and we were all unified in creating a great execution plan, and we knew what Al's goals were, and we knew we wanted to have this collaborative approach. Not that we couldn't do it, but there's still a lot of challenges with people not having that truly under one contract, right? I mean, we all still have to protect our risk. We all have to still operate as companies. So I think it really does come down to the collaborative nature of the people that you're trying to assemble. What I would advocate for is the cleanest way to do it to ensure collaboration is to go the design build route if you have that trust in your partners. If you want to go the traditional kind of CM at risk with design assist because that's what your organization allows, or there's too much modification that would need to happen from a contractual standpoint, but you have the right players and they want to operate collaboratively. It's not that you can't do it. I've done it that way before, but it does take the right people. And what I would say is that execution plan, which is so key at the beginning, if you have everyone at the table together and they can make it together, you're going to save time as opposed to hiring Matt first, then hiring me and Jameson, and then having to kind of rework Matt's plan, incorporate our feedback, and kind of reiterate on some of those things. Try to do it as early as you can together. It ultimately will save time, and I think the team's going to gel better under that unified agreement. That's just my perspective. But Matt or Jameson, other thoughts there?
So I completely agree. And we keep saying the word collaboration. And that's actually the heart of it. And there's always conversations about, sign the contract, put it in the drawer, and hopefully you never have to look at it again. But it's really the relationships between the project team that's delivering, including the owner. One of the best design build projects I ever did was a bid build contract for a healthcare project. There's other flavors of the delivery as well. A true integrated project delivery, that's a little heavier structure, but where you're actually forming a purpose-built corporation that everybody is going to collaborate together with. So it really does come down to, and I've said this internally to our own design teams. Architects typically design buildings. What we need to put more thought into is designing how we're delivering the projects. And that whole team buying in together, how are we actually going to work together? And that's a design problem all of its own. And figure out what the best way to get to the end of the road, a complete project on budget, on time, with a happy owner.
Perfect.
Hey, Kurt, this is
Yeah.
Mark Winchell. I was going to weigh in on this because this is near and dear to my heart. I've built like one of each, just about every way you can, from CM to agency to design build to general contracting, for retailers, for healthcare clients, senior living, apartments, so this is all really great commentary, I think, and it is really nuanced, and it really comes down, I think, to a couple of things that have been touched on. Alex used the word trust. Trust in my mind is huge, right? So that's where it all starts. Either you trust somebody or you don't. And I think that really guides the decision. Either you trust a design builder and putting all your eggs in one basket and knowing there may not be as much checks and balances, or maybe you don't, or you want to kind of test the market, or there's unique conditions where you want to kind of try some things out, and you might go a CM route where you've got a CM agreement and an architect and an owner, and you kind of have it separated a little bit just to have a little more checks and balances. And I think that's the nuance of it, is that choosing a delivery method, in my opinion, isn't just, based on any one thing. It's based on a jillion things, like the market and your project and what's your goal, and is it schedule, is it budget, how much involvement, all these things, right? So in my mind, that's the challenge, is to really bring that expertise from the market to understand what's going on at this moment in time for an owner's project, and really sense, okay, what's the questions we've got to ask, who do we have to ask them of, and what's the best buy. And it's really unique right now what's going on with the market because of all the volatility and pricing and supply chain issues. it's more important now to know more than you ever wanted to know about your supply chain. It's not just about knowing who you're partner with at the contracting level. It's where you get your material, where's it coming from, who's doing it, are they busy? So there's so many different things that are affecting these decisions, and it's way down the line. So to me, trust and sensing where you're at with your project and the overall market is really key in all of this.
Thanks for that, Mark. I would agree with you that I think trust is probably the key factor across the board. If you don't trust who you're getting in partnership with, there's no amount of paper that's going to protect you. So, all right. So I think that is going to wind up the Q&A session, and I'm going to turn it over to Kelly for some closing remarks. I think that's correct, Kelly.
That is correct. We're a little early, so you're going to get some time back this morning. I love that we keep focusing on collaboration for one. That is our fourth pillar. So that's near and dear to our hearts as the council. But I think hopefully you've taken away a few things here, and we kind of left on materials management to some extent, which is great. Thank you, Mark, for bringing that up, since we have a program coming up on that, and look for more information on that. But I first want to thank, obviously, Steve Vance for stepping up and being our professor this morning and helping us with our typical housekeeping and sharing with the definition and setting the stage for this morning. So thank you, Professor, for doing that today. And then Kurt, Guildhouse, thank you for stepping up and obviously moderating. You did a fantastic job. We do spend a lot of time putting these programs together. So hopefully everybody appreciates that and realizes they're all expertise and not professional speakers. So also, Kurt, thank you for chairing this particular program and pulling it all together with your committee and of course the staff here. So thank you so much for that. Also, I want to thank, of course, again, the training and education sponsors, in particular, our platinum sponsor, Cosney Wagner. They continually support us and we really appreciate that. That leads me to the survey. So the survey has a little QR code. It's really easy to scan with your phone. I know you all know how to do that. It really does help us. If you take some time right now while I finish up, and you don't need to look at me, you can just go ahead and scan that, and just takes a couple of minutes to answer those questions, but they mean a whole lot to us. So I really do appreciate that. And any suggestions for future programs, that's also very helpful when we ask that question. If you would take a little bit of time to think about that. We're always looking for more ideas. We're always looking for speakers. So if you're curious about that, please reach out to me and we'll get you involved. Also, don't forget to look at our website for resources. We have lots of information on our website. It should answer a lot of your questions. If it doesn't, of course, reach out to the office. On our resources page, you will find the PDH-LUs. If there's past ones that you participated in, you can find them there. There's also resources for programs. We do record these programs that are virtual. So if you have paid for these, then obviously you can get those for free. And we will give you a code for that to be able to access that. If anyone's interested in sharing this with someone else, obviously let them know that they can contact us and we'll get them a code after sending them a lovely invoice. So appreciate that. Social media is a great way to share more about the council and share more about our program, share more about what we do and our mission. So we appreciate that from all you members. Please make sure that you link in with us. Make sure you follow our LinkedIn page. And then last but not least, thank you all for joining us this morning. It's a nice, lovely, rainy day. Kind of worked out great that it is a webinar format today and not in person, but we will be in person shortly. We're getting a lot of questions about that. Most of our programs will be moving to in person. We do have the project tour coming up. Don't miss that. It's a project tour, happy hour. Let's get together. So hopefully we'll see you then. Have a wonderful day. Appreciate it. Take care.